Would you like to take this opportunity to say sorry to voters who voted for you, like Chrissy, pensioners who are about to lose hundreds this winter because of your choices?
What I'd say to Chrissy is this. I absolutely promised that we would stabilise the economy.
Keir Starmer just had a complete meltdown after being ranked as rock bottom for leadership and management. It's almost impressive how someone who promised to rescue the country with lower taxes and job growth ended up with a performance so bad, even experts are publicly questioning if electing him was some kind of national prank.
We then discovered £22 billion missing.
Okay, so you've mentioned the £22 billion a couple of times. You have also pointed out the
Well, it is the single reason we've had to take this.
The man sold the UK a dream that turned out to be more of a nightmare. He's completely fumbling when it comes to running the country, failing to deliver anything close to a budget that works for the public, and leaving the concept of national care as nothing more than a forgotten afterthought. So after all this joke, what exactly happened with Starmer, and how did he react to this humiliation? Let's explore it all together.
We've got a long way down the road of collaborating to that end.
Prime Minister, will you approve Sue Gray's severance payment?
Look, we've had a really important meeting today of the Council of Regions and Nations, which is hugely important for the country. We've had a huge investment of 24
Can't
billions
answer whether
of
or not
pounds,
you'll approve her
24
severance
billions
payment.
of pounds, which will be replicated in jobs across the country. That is really important. And as we head towards that investment summit on Monday, a major event.
And I would say Keir Starmer's obsession with rules has turned into one of his fatal flaws, because this guy is so laser-focused on playing by the book that he's managed to transform himself into the human embodiment of a malfunctioning office printer.
Really important. And as we head towards that investment summit on Monday, a major event, and then onto the budget, we're resetting and change the way we run this country, and that's really, really important.
Sure, being a stickler for procedure might have earned him points back in his days as a barrister, but in the chaotic world of politics, it's like bringing a rule book to a street fight, completely useless and a bit embarrassing. He's become this robotic, emotionless figure who seems to have forgotten that leadership isn't just about quoting regulations, and the people, oh, they've noticed. His insistence on coming off as cold and detached makes him seem more machine than man, like he's programmed to repeat regulations rather than show any trace of empathy or warmth.
We've just had the first meeting of the Council of Nations and Regions. I've had every First Minister here, the Deputy First Minister in Northern Ireland, and all the mayors from across England. We've had a really constructive discussion.
And when things get tough, Starmer doesn't rise to the occasion. He hides behind a wall of inflexible rules. Even in the face of national emergencies, he remains hopelessly tethered to procedures, and it gets worse. Whenever he's asked to face real problems affecting real people, he resorts to spitting out statistics in a way that feels pre-programmed and devoid of any human touch. Instead of directly answering questions, he sidesteps like a malfunctioning GPS, making random turns into economic growth and stability territory.
The chief prosecutor, what does it make him sound like? It makes him sound like a figure out of Stalin's Russia. In Starmer's eyes, he is clearly of impeccable character. He is always right.
If Starmer's robotic demeanour gives you déjà vu, it's because we've seen this painfully awkward political theatre before. Hello, Theresa May. Just like May, who became the unfortunate poster child for cringe-worthy political rigidity, Starmer sticks to pre-rehearsed slogans that he repeats so much you'd think he's trying to brainwash the nation.
I think there are very real reasons for this. When you're looking at this kind of thing, you always look, well, has there been anybody like this before? I think the answer is one very obvious figure, and that is Theresa May.
Remember May's strong and stable mantra that aged like milk? Starmer has his own greatest hits, like "My father was a toolmaker" and "We have working people," phrases so overused that they've practically become a national joke.
And that is Theresa May. That she has the same sort of rigidity, the same sort of strange sense. She always called it public service. He constantly goes on about this. this. She even used a similar phrase, which was strong and stable.
The recent interview meltdown was a case study in just how disastrously wrong his approach can go. It wasn't just bad, it was a full-scale implosion. When pressed with tough questions, Starmer clung desperately to his memorised figures, hoping they'd do the heavy lifting. Instead of exuding any form of strength or confidence, he looked bewildered, like a man who'd just realised his cheat sheet was for the wrong exam.
You cannot have a moral life if you have no experience of literature, if you've got no experience of the romantic poems of life, love, loss, death, all of those things. So here is somebody who seems to have an extraordinarily it's a very, very mechanistic view.
But let's get to the pièce de résistance of his downfall, his complete inability to adapt. The man can't handle a straightforward question without doing the conversational equivalent of the cha-cha, dodging from one statistic to the next, like he's hoping everyone will get bored and give up. Case in point, his bizarre obsession with a $24 billion investment figure. He dropped it repeatedly, like a kid who just learned a new big word, thinking it would magically make everything better. But instead of impressing anyone, it only highlighted the emptiness of his arguments. People didn't forget the questions. They saw straight through the smoke and mirrors. His answers were shallow, robotic, and painfully disconnected from the real issues.
I think it turns into something deeply inhuman and unhumane. He's very fond, isn't he, of saying, "I find it easy to be ruthless."
Keir Starmer's leadership problems don't just end with his awkward, evasive media moments and that robotic delivery. Nope, it goes deeper. We're talking about a guy standing at the helm of a system where British democracy itself has been kicked around and watered down, and it's partly thanks to decisions made way back in the Tony Blair days. Let's rewind to 1997. Blair's government rolled out sweeping constitutional changes that were supposed to modernise the UK, but they ended up yanking power away from the people we actually vote for and handing it over to unelected technocrats and judges. Fast forward to today, and Keir Starmer is just the latest face propping up this system, a system that's left the average voter feeling more powerless than ever.
What Starmer is the incarnation of all the fundamental changes that have taken place in our constitution, a kind of behind-the-scenes revolution since Blair. Starmer has a real set of values. He believes in the rules. Theresa May believed in the rules, but Starmer's are a much more structured, much more focused set of rules.
Take the Bank of England, for example. Blair's government gave it full independence in 1997, which basically meant that setting interest rates, a decision that impacts your mortgage, your loans, even your grocery bill, was handed over to a bunch of financial wizards you can't even vote out if they mess up. So, if you're feeling the pain of skyrocketing interest rates, don't look to Starmer for help. He's too busy defending the sacred rule of law, and these same unelected bodies acting as if giving more power to these untouchables is some kind of democratic virtue.
Wrote back in 2009, coming out, talking about smashing people with baseball bats. Now, we've seen it again, haven't we? With the famous MP for Rotherham and all the rest of it. And that, there is a violence about all of it.
And then there's the Supreme Court, created in 2009, which was another Blair-era brainchild. It gave judges even more authority over Parliament. When Boris Johnson's prorogation of Parliament was ruled unlawful in 2019, some people celebrated, but others realised, wait a minute, this decision just highlighted how much clout these unelected judges actually have. And does Starmer care? Not one bit. He's too devoted to protecting these constitutional norms, even if it means distancing himself from what voters actually want.
Which again, we've seen it before in English history. There's this kind of rigidity, this kind of stiff-backness, this same kind of aggression in the name of what they think of as a sort of virtue, is a strong characteristic of Puritanism. And we did have a Puritan revolution, which behaved in many ways very much as they are behaving.
The problem is, all these structural shifts have left the public feeling like they're yelling into the void. Ipsos did a survey in 2023, and only 34% of Brits felt their voices mattered. Starmer's defence of these systems only makes that frustration worse. It's like he's a cheerleader for a broken democracy that serves everyone except the actual electorate. The guy's commitment to this crumbling framework makes him look out of touch, and reinforces the image of a political elite that doesn't give a toss about restoring power to the people.
Is his cabinet a cabinet of talent? Are we seeing a kind of Tony Blair style, fantastic...
Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Yeah. Are there giants like Gordon Brown? Is there a Demosthenes like Jack Straw? There were some reasonably talented people.
And let's not even get started on Labour's cabinet. It's a lineup that makes you nostalgic for the Blair era, back when Labour's heavyweights like Gordon Brown actually had the gravitas to manage a crisis. Brown was the kind of leader you might disagree with, but at least he knew how to command a room. Now, look at Starmer's lineup, a cabinet of shadows, as some critics have labelled it. West Streeting is apparently one of the brighter stars, but let's be real, he's got all the magnetism of a damp sponge. Sure, he can fire off a decent soundbite, but when it comes to vision or inspiring confidence, it's crickets.
He's hopeless at party management. Whereas Angela Rayner is, famously the only Secretary of State to have left school with more children than O-levels. But she's human. This is her profound strength. She's human, she can take a joke, she may indeed be a joke, she can laugh at herself, she can enjoy herself, and she has a gut feeling.
Angela Rayner is the one beacon of hope in this gloomy lineup. She's relatable, funny, and human, all the things Starmer isn't. Remember when she said she left school with more children than qualifications? People loved that. It made her real and approachable. Meanwhile, Starmer couldn't seem relatable if he tried, which, let's be honest, he probably rehearses in front of the mirror. Where Rayner can laugh at herself, Starmer is stiff and humourless, like cracking a joke might cause his perfectly curated persona to shatter into pieces. It's not just a charisma problem, it's a leadership problem. If you can't connect with your base, or even inspire your own party, you're in deep political trouble. The fallout of this mess is real. Labour feels like it's teetering on the edge of an identity crisis, and critics are having a field day. YouGov did a poll in 2024 that showed only 29% of people believe Starmer's team can actually transform the UK. Ouch. Compare this to the early 2000s, when Blair's Labour felt like a powerhouse of change and optimism. Today's Labour feels stale, visionless, and uninspired. Even die-hard Labour supporters are scratching their heads, wondering if this is the party that can tackle modern Britain's challenges, or if it's just a shadow of its former self.